January 28, 2022 would not soon be forgotten. 41-year-old Pesce and his partner, 36-year-old Tomás Aguiló, had found a new route on the great Cerra Torre in Argentina. For Pesce, it was a climb like most others he had completed in his life, but the journey turned out to be different, very different. They had reached the top, but during their descent, the rocks seemed to have a life of their own and began to quiver as Mother Nature hurled an avalanche of rocks, snow, and ice from the top of the mountain. Their lives flashed before their eyes, and in one confusing moment, a tragic turn of guilt, pain, and despair was unleashed. This is the story of the Cerro Torre disaster, 2022. The Cerro Torre is a beautiful chain of a total of 4 mountains and is located in Argentina. It is also known as the Cerro Chaltén. As difficult as it is to climb it, several attempts have been made. Some were successful, others unfortunately failed. But the Italian Corrado Pesce, one of the greatest alpinists in the world, had found a different route that he thought would be easier and faster. Along with his friend, Tomás Aguiló, they would begin on the east face and finish on the north. It was not going to be easy, but at least it was worth a shot. Pesce was confident. He had climbed tougher routes in the Alps, the Himalayas, and Patagonia. In 2014, he climbed the Direct de la Métis route of 1,100 meters on the north face of the Grand Jurasse, Mont Blanc. In 2015, he climbed the Rolling Stones route of 1,100 meters, also on the north face of the Grand Jurasse, Mont Blanc. In 2016, he climbed the Impossible Star route of about 1,300 meters on the Bhagirathi mountain in the Indian Himalayas. In 2019, he climbed the psycho-vertical route of 950 meters on the south face of Torre Eger with Aguiló and 4 others. As far as he was concerned, this new route on the Cerro Torre would be a bit tricky and difficult, but not impossible to climb. They could reach the summit within a few hours. Although the Cerro Torre was notorious for its bad weather and its intimidating height of 3,128 meters, he had to overcome the mountain. On January 26, 2022, the Italian Corrado Pesce and his Argentinian friend Tomás Aguiló set off to make the dangerous but exciting climb of the infamous Cerro Torre. It was the perfect scenery, 2 close friends who had been on several adventures in the past, a beautiful and isolated landscape, the excitement of doing what you love with an old friend, and the top quality gear they had packed. From rock canes to padded coats, gloves, socks, climbing boots, everything was perfect. Finally, the 2 friends began their ascent and embarked on what would be a huge turning point in both their lives. The climb was hard, and the weather was not exactly favorable, but they were used to this. They forged ahead regardless. Even though Pesce was the older of the 2, he took the lead and climbed with tremendous agility and experience. Like the other times they had done this, Tomás was impressed. They were convinced they had chosen one of the safest routes to the summit, but there was still a small lingering fear at the back of their minds that the weather would not continue to be relatively good and they would be thrown off the rock. After they had reached about 2,743.2 meters, they came across a few other Italian climbers. Matteo della Bodella, David Bacci, and Matteo De Giacomo were also on the new route to the summit. Now things were getting a little interesting. Nothing made a climber and explorer happier than sharing experiences with like minds, so they decided to finish the last 304.8 meters together. Once again, Pesce took the lead. He was indeed the most spectacular climber they had ever seen, no doubt. It was exactly 6 p.m. the next day when the group finally reached the summit. They had done it. It had been one of the most difficult climbs of their lives, but they finally made it. But Pesce was thinking of something else. Through his years of experience, he knew that night was the best time to begin their descent. The rocks would stay in place better at night than during the day. He discussed his thoughts with his friends as the others from the group collapsed in much-needed rest. Aguiló thought it was a great idea, but stressful. They had just reached the summit, and Pesce suggested they begin their descent in a few hours in the same night. He was not sure he had it in him, and if he was being honest, He didn't know if Pesce still had enough strength and agility to want to begin a descent so soon, but he trusted Pesce, and if he believed they should begin their descent, then that's what they'll do. Aguiló agreed. Pesce discussed their plan with the rest of the group. Unfortunately, the others were not so enthusiastic about it. The other Italians needed not only rest, but more time to process their achievement. Pesce understood, and so he decided that he and his friend Aguiló would begin their descent the next morning before the crack of dawn. He could not risk the rocks giving way and causing a disaster. Descending the following morning was the second best option they had. The next morning, January 28, 2022, Pesce and Aguiló kept their word and left the rest of the group at the summit. They took the southeast ridge, commonly known as the compressor route. Pesce had a bad feeling in his heart, but he didn't want to pay attention to it. He just wanted to go back down where it was safe. It was dark and cold, but the two men began to descend little by little, hoping to reach solid ground before noon. Suddenly, mischief began to appear. At first, Pesce thought he heard rocks shaking in the distance. He stopped in his tracks and signaled Aguiló to stop moving. The two froze and listened for more sounds. They heard nothing. No matter how tough mountaineers are, this kind of situation frightens them. A few moments later, there was still no sound, so Pesce gave the signal to continue. At that moment, he put his hands on the rock for some support. What he felt next almost made his heart skip a beat. It rumbled. How could there be rumbling in the rocks, he thought to himself. It immediately dawned on him what was about to happen. His eyes widened as he slowly looked up. His fears were confirmed. An ice mushroom broke loose from above, sending a torrent of rocks, snow, and ice their way. They were about to be crushed. What made it worse was that they had nowhere to go. Both men took a deep breath and braced themselves while protecting their faces with their hands. Still, they were no match for Mother Nature's wrath. The avalanche descended upon them with a terrifying rumble and seriously injured them both. Unfortunately, they were separated. Aguiló could barely see Pesce, and his body screamed for medical attention. He could move a little, but he desperately needed help. His condition could worsen if they didn't get down soon. Pesce, on the other hand, was covered by the avalanche on the other side of the rock. He was more seriously injured and could not even move a muscle. He could barely speak or call for help. He just lay there in pain, hoping and praying that someone would come and rescue him. Aguiló shouted Pesce's name into the abyss, hoping his friend would respond. He didn't even know if Pesce was still alive, so he decided to call for help. Then he realized that most of their equipment had been lost in the avalanche. All he had left was a headlamp. He knew exactly what he had to do. Fortunately, someone had spotted the SOS signal from a headlamp high on the mountain. A group of 10 people, including Alcocer and German alpinist Tomás Huber, were called to hike 2 hours to the base of the glacier, Noruego's camp, to investigate the accident. Alcocer, Huber, and 2 others continued past the high camp across the broken glacier to the base of the east wall. They wanted to rescue the survivor who gave the headlight signal. They searched and searched, but with no luck. Friday at exactly 5 p.m., Della Bordella's team, which had left Pesce and Aguiló on the summit, had finally finished their 30 descents down the southeast ridge, where they met Alcocer and the rest of Aguiló's rescue team at the base of the wall. Della heard about the terrible accident and without hesitation used his drone to pinpoint Aguiló's location. The drone flew around for several minutes. Eventually, Aguiló's location was determined and a quick rescue was essential. Della Bordella prepared to lead the rescue team. It was an incredible feat of courage for him to descend and go back to rescue a comrade. Regardless, Della felt he was the best person to lead the rescue. He had just climbed up. He knew the best routes and which ones to avoid. Ignoring his mental and physical exhaustion, Della, along with the rest of the rescue team, began to climb back up. It was midnight when they found Aguiló. Some team members began to descend with him, but Della and Chaili, a close friend of Pesce, stayed on the wall. They had to find Pesce. Despite a rising storm and only one rope between them, They waited on the triangular snowfield until 3 a.m. for any sign of Pesce. The temperature was dropping. The wind howled. When Della Bordella began to hallucinate from exhaustion, they had also started the descent. Aguiló had been taken by helicopter to the nearest hospital for treatment, but Pesce was not so lucky. More drones were sent out, but because of the terrible storm, all rescue attempts were called off. Pesce could not possibly survive that long, they thought. Finally, more than 11 hours later, they were able to zoom in on images from a drone flying near the accident. Pesce's body could be seen. He had slipped 50 meters below the platform where he had spent the night. Due to the lack of adequate protection, Pesce had passed away of cold and pain. His body was white, pale, and lifeless. The tragic news about the great alpinist Corrado Pesce went around. However, there was comfort in the fact that he passed away like the fighter and champion he truly was, a real legend in all regards. If you have followed this story to this point, I would like to say a big thank you. If you like this kind of story, don't forget to hit the like button and leave a comment below. For more of this type of content, please click on the subscribe button and turn on your notification bell so you will be notified when another video is posted. Until next time, be cautious and don't ever lose your sense of wonder.